Can I call Terry first?
Go ahead and do it.
Hey, Carrie, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
We're just up for the pledge.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, no.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Millie just showed up.
Are they still here?
Are you still here? No.
Can you hear okay, Karen?
Students,
Yeah, I can.
stop those guys. Our last board member just showed up. You want to take a picture of a complete board? All right.
Terry, we're gonna redo the picture.
Okay.
We could put the phone in the spot for you.
That's all right.
Squeeze on over. Where's Jody?
She's walking up.
All right, should we get in position?
Yep. We're gonna wait for, is Jody coming through the door?
Yeah, she should be coming.
Where's Jody? Hold on 1 second. We got one more missing.
Is this all of you speak?
Yeah, oh, this is good. Can I wave so they can see me? Well, I'm standing, so don't worry. You don't have to ask.
You are standing?
I'm standing.
Her there?
She's out there.
We're waiting for you.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Okay, you got everybody now.
The ball, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you folks for your patience.
Yes.
They needed that for the yearbook. Sure, keep the rats away. Here, everybody get situated. Ms. Schaefer, roll call, please.
Mr. Lottie?
Here.
Ms. Fisher? Here. Mrs. Hess?
Here.
Mrs. Holzberger?
Here.
Mrs. Ellison?
Here.
Mrs. Andrino? Here. Mr. Riley?
Present.
Dr. Bocchino?
Present.
Mr. Myers?
Here. Approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes to be approved. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'm sorry, Joan. I forgot you're doing board docs. It's okay. We're doing a new system and she's trying to do it live so you can see votes and everything else. Okay, to the superintendent, we have recognition.
I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge several of our schools for making annual yearly progress. A to B Cheston School, I would like to acknowledge the staff, the principal, Ms. Piazza, the assistant principal, Mr. Yanders, Forks Elementary School and his staff, Mr. Mike McCauley, Palmer Elementary School, Ms. Nauman as principal, and Paxnosa Elementary School, Mr. Hightower as principal, and Mr. Hector Bonilla as assistant principal, Shawnee Elementary School, Mrs. Galloway as principal, and their respective staffs, and Tracy Elementary School, Mr. Robert Steckel as principal, and their staff. They have done an outstanding job. the schools that were acknowledged from the Pennsylvania Department of Education will receive this recognition, and these will go into their buildings. So I applaud our administration, our staff members, and all of our students for doing an outstanding job. Let's give them a round of On a second note, I would like to recognize our staff. We had a letter of recognition from the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science. And they sent a letter stating what an outstanding staff we have as far as our students, our administration, our custodial staff, our food service, for all that they had done while they were in attendance for the STEM program. And that's science, technology, engineering, and when they do these things, you know, they have an opportunity, obviously, to go to many different settings. And when we are acknowledged, it really is one that you have to applaud every single stakeholder, because our school district is successful on behalf of this initiative and many, because of all of our constituents. So I thank everyone that was involved in this program. The next order is a recognition for our solicitor, Attorney McFall. Mr. McFall has served as our district solicitor since November 13, 2000. During that time, we've come to appreciate and depend upon his expertise, knowledge of school law, and prompt responses to our legal needs. Please accept this certificate of appreciation on behalf of the school board and administration for 11 years of outstanding service to the Easton Area School District. Best wishes for continued success in all you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. You're done. With that done, we will go to presentation, budget update, Mrs. Guidry.
Today, we participated in a Commonwealth budget seminar put on by PASBO and PASA. Very sobering news to the school districts within the Commonwealth. You want to go to the next slide? This is where we are today with our budget. The initial revenues and using fund balance of $10,441,171. The preliminary budget used $10,441,000, you see it up there, $171 to balance the budget of $141,910,819. We have had significant changes in the funding from Pennsylvania. That decrease is $3,623,043, leaving us now with using $12,888,724 to balance our budget. If you turn to the next page, this is what our revenue looks like. Putting it all together there, federal revenue making up just 2%. That's that little line that's up there to the left of the purple, which is the real estate taxes at 64%. Revenue for specific educational programs there at 3%, other state revenue at 6%, and coming down there, basic instructional and operating subsidy at 4%, other local income at 4%, I'm sorry, basic instructional and operating subsidy at 14%. And other local revenue at 4%, and Act 511 taxes, which is the transfer tax on real estate, and also earned income tax at 6%. You turn to the next page. When you look at some changes that we have put in place since the last time we had the preliminary budget, I'm going to go over those. Within the expenditures for instruction, we have cut $213,756. Now, some of those numbers are not significant because they are workers' comp, and you can see there at that 1,600, the adult education programs are just cut $4 in that particular one, and that represents the workers' comp for that. We have been working diligently, 5% from building budgets, and also working with the custodial maintenance to come up with some cuts to our programs. You want to go to the next one? This is the support services that support our instruction, from pupil personnel services on the very first line to down at the bottom there you see central support services at 20 to 2,800. That is our technology. Transportation, 808,000 cut, and that basically was $1,100,000 worth of buses, which we agreed that we would cut out of the budget. However, you need to know that the fuel bid, the diesel fuel, yesterday we opened, and the fuel that we had estimated from the very first time that we did the budget to yesterday is increasing $100,625. So there you can see that the transportation is not cut the $1,000,001, but is only $808,000. Want to go to the next slide? We have student activities and community services. We've moved some monies around, but that increase there is $566. And then we have financing uses. We have $84,326 increase because we moved money to compensate from another department, from the technology department to cover the lease. Yes, it was budgeted, but it was budgeted in another account. So we just moved that $84,326. The total cuts that we have made to the budget so far is $1,175,490. We're now down to $140,735,329. Next one. This is what our expenditures look like. Salaries and benefits at 69%. Debt service and transfers at 12%, and operating expenses at 17, almost 18% there. Current budget status, where we are now, that $141,910,819 has been cut by almost $17,000 for employee benefits. The bus purchase at $1.1 million, the diesel fuel there at that $100,625, and the 5% budget cuts at $159,135. So we are down currently today, and we'll continue to work until the budget meeting on the 13th to look at other cuts within the budget. So we are at that $140,735,329. This is from our 5-year budget model that we purchased from PFM. And you can see that the expenditures are there in the red and the revenues in the blue. Based upon where we are currently, this is what it looks like with the expenditures continuing to rise at a more steep rate than the revenues. We also heard today in the budget seminar that the index next year is projected to be somewhere between 1% and 1.4%. So, and also indicating that perhaps any exceptions will go away next year, that you will not be able to raise your taxes above the index unless you go to referendum. So very sobering news today for our school districts. The next slide. So what's next for the budget? The all-day budget meeting is on April 13th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're going to do the adoption of the proposed budget that night at 6:30, April 13th, and I want to explain why it's so early. You need 30 days between the proposed budget and the final budget, and the May meeting. From the April meeting to the May meeting, there's not 30 days. There's also not 30 days between the May meeting and the June meeting. So the proposed budget at April 13th will meet the criteria for having those 30 days between the adoption of the budget. So May 26th then will be adoption of the final budget, will be advertised, and that meeting will be at 6:30 p.m. Does the board have any questions?
Yes, I do, but the final cutoff we do have is still June 30th.
That's correct.
Okay, even though we may plan to adopt it on a certain date,
That's
our
correct.
cutoff is June 30th.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And the other thing I'd like to say, this is a reaction to all labor-drawn businesses. I mean, we even if we took so much away in labor, we are still heavily labor-driven. I mean,
69%, almost 70% of the
Right.
budget is salary and benefits.
right, yes,
And part of that issue is the retirement rate.
right,
That it continues to rise.
right,
At 8.65 for next year, 8.65% of your salaries needs
Right.
to be paid into the retirement system, and projected after that for the next year is in excess of 12%. So unless the PESER's board and the state come back and lower that by extending the payment period, that would be a significant increase in cost for next year.
and they're doing that to keep their afloat, not parent, not realizing what it's doing to the school districts.
I think they actually do realize what's happening to the school district, and that's why they're extending the period of payment.
Okay, and right now, the teachers are paying, is it 7.5?
Depending on when they are in the system, they would pay 7.25, 7.5.
Okay,
Yes.
so they're going up to, they won't go up as fast as ours, that's for sure.
No, they have an election where they have indicated they're either, what particular class they're in, whether they're at 7.25 or 7.5.
Yes.
Or some of them over could be
When I
less.
thought it was only 5.25, so it shows you it went up and it's
Yes.
still not enough.
That's correct.
Mr. Mrs. But new teachers can opt up to 10%.
Yes, under
How
the
does
new
that affect
system.
our PESERs?
But we still are locked in at that 7.
It doesn't, whether what they elect doesn't affect what we have
That's
to pay.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yes, it does not.
I have a few. How many retirements are reflected in the current budget number?
We only have, I think, a small number, less than 10, is it less than?
10, I think
we 10.
accepted one more this week.
Okay.
Are they reflected in the current, in these numbers that are here, those 10?
We have not sat down to look at those as to whether we need to replace those teachers at this point, and so we will be doing that shortly. Yeah.
Okay. Has anybody looked into, I just saw Bethlehem looked into their debt refinancing.
We have looked into that, yes.
And what is the result of that?
It's not beneficial for the district at this point to be able to refinance. The rates are not good enough for us to be able to have significant savings.
Okay. Can I ask a few more?
Sure.
I'm curious, what is the projected amount that the current freeze that's in place might be saving us this year? I know last year we implemented a freeze much later and we wound in coming under budget, even though we still used our fund balance.
I don't have a projected number for that. I've seen all purchase orders at this point are coming to me to determine whether we're going ahead and purchase them. I would say that we're not going to have that number solid until June 30th. Yeah.
And when will you be presenting to the board the new budget document reflecting any changes so that
On
we?
April 13th. I
So-
hope to have that out before then, at
Right.
least 2 weeks ahead of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions?
Anybody else have any other questions?
I will provide the document that we got today from PASBO and PASA. It actually is about 100 pages, so if you indicate that you do not want that document, or I could even post it out there in an email to you. They are going to give us the slides so we can use them in a presentation that will be available either tomorrow or Monday, so we can use some of those slides in a presentation.
And just one quick question. The governor has, or the department that has given us any final numbers?
Yes, we got that today.
Yeah,
Well, when you say final numbers, they're proposed numbers because
Yes.
the legislature has not approved the budget and the governor has not signed it at this point. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And your deadline is what?
Their deadline is
30th,
June 30th. June 30th.
Oh, we understand. Any other questions?
Yeah.
If not, we'll move on to interested citizens on agenda items. If you want to, now it's time to come sign in.
I have the closest seat, so I think I'll go first. Can you hear me? Tara Gilligan. I live at 100 West Burke Street in Easton. First of all, I'm thankful for the chance to address the full board on Policy 707 as it relates to before and after care programs in the Easton School District. As a parent and as a taxpayer, I hope that the actions taken by the board today will make it possible to offer before and after care programs in any individual Easton school that wishes to have it. In looking over the current draft of Policy 707, I noticed a trend in the school district to allow and even encourage groups to use the school buildings for activities that benefit children and community members. Right? In fact, the policy designates certain groups like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, recreational leagues, fraternal organizations, project, in a class of their own. These groups fall under Class 3, community service groups. They're permitted to use school facilities for no additional cost and for sound reasons. These are programs that provide educational and social benefits to individuals who participate in them and to the community as a whole. It's in everyone's interest to promote these kinds of programs. I think it's important to see that this board has thus already recognized that there are legitimate uses for the school buildings that fall outside of their primary function, which is, of course, educating students during the school day. Today, we're focused on Class 4 organizations, especially the before and after care programs. I want to suggest that these programs offer many of the same benefits already recognized in the language of Policy 707, plus some additional benefits as well. I'll briefly mention two. I hope others who speak will be able to go into these in more detail. First, educational and social benefits. Quite a few studies demonstrate a correlation between quality aftercare programs, the kind we're talking about, programs that are run right on the school grounds, and improved test scores, lower delinquency rates. Right? I might note that March is in corrective action right now. Second, financial benefits. One of the reasons that my committee of parents working with Mrs. Steinberg recommended Hildebrandt to provide programming at March was its openness to profit sharing. This district could potentially raise much needed funds through a carefully selected provider. I know that this year principals scrambled to find money to pay for snacks for PSSAs. Budgets in schools are tight. Wouldn't this provide some welcome spending money in a bleak economy? These are the big picture considerations that I hope you'll keep in mind as you deliberate the specific policy. As for the specifics, well, I suppose that the $1,000 fee is the most contentious aspect of this policy. About this, I only want to say that I hope the board will err on the side of the greatest flexibility. Please use this policy not to exclude anybody, but to empower building principals and their communities to make their decisions about whether and how to provide extended care. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katherinefurlong. I live at 821 McCartney Street. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board on Policy 707, Agenda Item 9, as it relates to before and after care programs in the Easton School District. I'm sure that there are many other parents, some of whom I recognize, in the room who are going to have compelling stories and statistics to share. But let me tell you about how after-school care helps to build community and attract a healthy tax base for the city and the school district. When my husband and I decided to purchase a home in 2005, we had a young child and we had plans for more. We both work outside of the home and have no immediate family in the area who would be able to assist with after-school care. I made investigating schools and the availability of before and after-school care a vital part of my house hunting process. I called schools before even walking through the door of a house to look at, and eliminated entire neighborhoods, entire school districts based on after and before school care. This is how important it is to some members of your constituency. I bought a house on College Hill because of the availability of care at March School, because we had a neighborhood school, and it was in walking distance to my home and to my work. I've made a conscious choice and a budgetary choice to only have one car with two working parents. I need to be close to my children and where they are for their after school and before school care. Easton as a community is desperately trying to revitalize itself. I've been hearing about the renaissance in Easton since I arrived in 2002, and we're working to market our neighborhoods and attract working families to settle here as a walkable, livable community who cares about its children and their future. We need to provide the support and infrastructure to enable that growth, and quality, affordable, extended care in our neighborhoods is essential for working families and a key component in marketing and revitalizing the city of Easton. As a parent and as a taxpayer, I hope that the actions taken by the board today will make it possible to offer before and after care programs in any individual Easton school that wishes to have it, and that any fees that are imposed on care providers are not impractical or so high that they make such a program impossible to sustain. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Carrie, Dr. Volcano, Tim. My name is Tarrant. I live at 623 Chestnut Terrace. My daughter's a third grader at March Elementary School. I'd like to offer some comments in reference to Policy 707 and the March Elementary School before and after care proposal. My wife and our friends and neighbors from the West Ward, South Side, and College Hill have been working diligently for over a year to reestablish an before and after care program for our children at March Elementary. And over this year, they've experienced quite a lot of frustration and disappointment, but to their credit, they've kept working to find an acceptable proposal to reestablish a very worthwhile program to March Elementary School and the families that send their children there. We came before this board, and we come before this board now as constituents in need of assistance. We come before you under the belief that you represent us. My expectation when I cast my vote for a school board member was that I was elected an advocate. And for me and people like me, an advocate that would help us, working class families with an interest in education and well-being of our children and our community. Having said that, what I expect when I or any other constituent comes to this body with a need is advocacy. Make no mistake, I don't expect any one of you to just simply agree to any suggestion that comes before you. We also voted for you because we consider you to be responsible representatives of us. So when we as constituents come to you with needs accompanied by a rational, reasonable proposal and a desire to make any necessary adjustments, I would expect this board to work with us to accomplish our worthwhile goal. If there are issues, let's resolve them. That's what I cast my vote for. I cast my vote for a problem solver. So as our advocates, it's your duty to help us. Any work done in the opposite direction to make a reasonable request from your constituents impossible is what I would consider simply cruel or irresponsible. When you all came to our doors seeking signatures for your petitions, I'm willing to wager that none of you said, when I'm elected, I'll create policies that will make it difficult to accommodate any reasonable needs you have. No, I'll wager that every one of you mentioned how you would help us if we needed to do more and better things for our community and schools. So here we are, we have a need, we have a reasonable and responsible proposal, and we're expecting you all to help us accomplish a very worthwhile goal. So please consider this when you're voting on Policy 707. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Board. My name is Rich Siegfried, and I live in Palmer Township. And you have several items on the agenda tonight which I just want to mention. Under academics, item E, a special ed contract for $4.3 million. You're being asked to approve it tonight. It's a little late. It's already been signed on 3/8 by Ms. McGinley. You might want to refuse to vote on it and see what happens. New business under miscellaneous, item A, changing law firms. Did you notice the school district hasn't won any lawsuits by having this law firm represent us? I had the same frustration when I was on the board for 8 years. And one of the lawyers, which I understand from reading the newspaper, the board hired to go to the PTA and tell them not to bring the parents. It's the parents' right and every taxpayer's right to come to this board. And you're going to hire that law firm. Good choice. Item O, under finance, dependent eligibility audit. Did you read the presentation? Did you hear the presentation? I looked at it, just about 6 minutes worth. Easton will provide, Easton School District will provide, Easton School District will provide, Easton School District will provide, mailed to all employees, verification mailing, thank you postcard, BMI will send a hard copy, no response reminder letter will be mailed after 5 business day that haven't another mailing. And it says here in the verbiage, all necessary postage required to mail will be the responsibility of Easton School District. But yet just 3 pages later, 4 pages, whatever it is here, it says all services including printing and postage. Now, is the postage included? Or is the school district paying the postage? Before you sign it and approve it, please make sure you check that out. And I really believe that audit shouldn't be needed. It should be done every year when you have open enrollment. And your benefit department should be taking care of that. It's not needed to spend that. This will be done in 2 to 3 months. Give it to that department and tell them you want it by the end of the school year. And let's stop negotiating. It's the teacher's fault, it's this one's fault for the contract, for the budget. Let's put the negotiation behind closed doors and not have it in the newspaper. Thank you.
Drew Anderson, Easton, PA. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think a vote for policy 707 is irresponsible, flat out. Nothing short of it. We elect you to be responsible fiscally and to education, and to vote with your brains and not with your heart at times. And you need to use your brains. Dr. Simia runs a tight ship. Judy Steinberg runs a tight ship. I can tell you that for sure. But a third grader sat down and explained to me in great detail how you could walk in and out of the school during the time that daycare was in operation. Somebody posted, Alan, a copy of the contract online that came from Hildebrand earlier. I think the persons that had advocated that contract need to take a long swim in the Delaware. I think the people that brought it to your attention need a hug, a kiss, and a big steak dinner, because you saved us from an agreement that would have caused devastation to Mr. Castrovinci in terms of the things he needs to do. It will prevent devastation in terms of the new CFO and the things that he or she chooses to do. It will prevent devastation in terms of the control that you expect your superintendent to have over your buildings. There is absolutely nothing in the context of that contract that is in favor of the school district. And I don't have time to go through it line by line. Jen, you're correct. We could earn a profit. You and I will be dust before we do. The correct number, if you choose to go into this, will be $1,000 per person per year minimum. Less than that, I guarantee you will lose money. This isn't education, it's daycare. But in a few seconds, we have a number of organizations, the Y for one, synagogues, churches, that provide excellent service, cost-effective. They do more for less than anybody here can do or ever will be able to do. They provide services to the school district on a routine basis by the hundreds. And in addition to that, there are a number of women in the community, essentially women, that provide in-home daycare as a means of keeping their head above water. And they're still a very part of the system. But I want to focus on one last thing. There's a role for nonprofits to collaborate with the district. I am terribly troubled by the concept that profit-making organizations would get in bed and the profits would leave this community. They need to stay here in the Lehigh Valley with organizations such as the Y and other groups that have a track record of positive service. I am particularly concerned about outside the community. And technically speaking, it does pose some problems under the school code. Now, you don't care about that, neither do I. But I care about this particular community. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Ben Carter. I appreciate the opportunity to speak towards Policy 707. Just one quick note on what Mr. Anderson said. He mentioned for-profit companies like Coca-Cola, like Dewey Engineering, like McDonald's, like Sodexo. Okay. So for more than a year, a number of individuals in this room, including my wife, have been working in good faith to bring a before and after care program back to March Elementary. As a group and at the direction of the administration, they contacted, interviewed, and selected a provider. This provider was approved by the principal of March and by the district administration. Last August, this board voted 6-1 to approve the contract with Hildebrandt Learning, but requested a few changes by Mr. McFall. As Mr. Anderson just mentioned, the solicitor made these changes, and after another unnecessary delay related to zoning, the contract was brought before the board in October. The board proceeded, for reasons that are extremely unclear, to vote 4-4 against the contract. One problem was a lack of clarity regarding cost of building usage. Mr. Kish was asked to come up with a number. He determined that $1,000 per room per school year was appropriate as a yearly usage fee for all before and after care programs. However, at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting in February, Mr. Myers rejected this and stated that the district repeatedly needed to get out of this business. I don't understand. Simply put, before and after care is an extremely valuable service that the district can offer at no cost to the district. If there are questions about that, make it so it doesn't cost the district anything. Simply put, you can do that. In every other district in the area on both sides of the river, they recognize this. Some of them are even making a profit for their district. That's not me just talking. They're making a profit. That's not looking at Hildebrandt. They're making a profit. The contract with Hildebrandt would have yielded a profit this year. You would have seen it up there. I asked you to do 3 things. First, please decide what the usage fee is for before and after care and put it back in Policy 707 and vote on it. Second, I would like the policy committee to write a policy that supports working parents and recognizes that before and after care is a service to the community, not just the parents. Third, please put a mechanism in place to address before and after care programs in district buildings. It has been extremely confusing to all involved what we were supposed to do from the very beginning. Committee members went through the process that was given to them and their results were approved throughout. But in one fell swoop, this board told them that the hundreds of hours that they took from their work and their families was pointless. And although I do not want to endanger the other 2 before and after care programs, it bears noting that the district could not produce a current contract with either of them. Why did we have to go through that? Why weren't these 2 programs exposed to the same scrutiny as the program at March? In the 21st century, before and after care is absolutely essential. Please support Policy 707. Please support parents at no cost to the district. And please put a policy in place so that all providers know what they're supposed to do. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else on the agenda items?
Good evening. My name is David Bittner. Excuse me, I live at 101 West Lafayette Street. Let me just write this down. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. Again, my name is David Bittner, 101 West Lafayette. I have a first grader who attends March. I would greatly urge all of you to please consider the program at March. Many of my friends and neighbors have brought up very compelling points, and we were all greatly interested in this program. I and my wife are full-time working parents. We are run down and tired and often feel we are letting our children down. Excuse me, by not being there. This is why it's so important for us to have a supportive and nurturing caretakers for our children. This care provider is very well organized and disciplined in their provision of services, and they are willing to profit share with this community and in this school district. Our children deserve the best that we can possibly give them, and I believe Hildebrandt is the right choice for a structured environment where our children can flourish and use the time before and after school to read, practice mathematics, and get social interaction instead of riding a bus to and from a site. The YMCA, as mentioned, well, I find this option basically to be substandard. My children go there right now. and my 6-year-old basically begs me on a daily basis not to have to go there. But she loves March Elementary School. I urge you all, please, to support Policy 707. Sorry. I think that one's mine too.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Hand. I live at 623 Chestnut Terrace. I am also here to speak to Policy 707. As a responsible taxpayer living in the Easton Area School District, I too believe that the buildings that I helped renovate and support with tax dollars should be utilized as much as possible with events and programming that would benefit the community as a whole or subsections of our community. This includes before and after care in any school where a need is demonstrated by the families of that community. As a working parent, there is not a more unsettling feeling than wondering if your child is safe and being appropriately cared for during the hours they are not with you. Childcare within the school provides a safe, familiar, structured environment for children and peace of mind for their parents. The benefits of these programs have been documented, and I don't think anyone has a doubt that a child in a structured before and after care program where homework is completed and skills are reinforced would perform better on tests. The March School community has demonstrated a need as evidenced by a successful child care program in the school for years before the renovations, and more recently through a survey of all March parents in the spring of 2010. I served on the committee to bring before and after care back to March School. I helped develop surveys for parents and potential providers. I assisted in interviewing providers and was part of the selection process. I was committed to the process, as were others in this room, because we know that before and after care at March would fill a need for working parents, thereby strengthening a community. The parents paying the provider will support this program, not the district, with the district potentially profiting through a profit share agreement with the vendor. I ask all of you to commit to the numerous working parents in this district who have a need for before and after care in the community schools, and vote yes to including childcare in Policy 707. Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Carter. I live at 618 Chestnut Terrace on College Hill. I'm a neighbor of Lisa's. I'm on the ad hoc committee that contacted, interviewed, and selected before and after care providers, a provider for March Elementary. We started the process over a year ago. I had no idea what Policy 707 was. I now know where it is on the internet and what the different color codings in the changes are. We have gone from board approval to non-approval for this program. We have gone from having a child care program at March to not having a program at present. My family is one of the families at March that needs child care for one simple reason. My husband and I both work. Our schedules are flexible enough that we only need about an hour of care a day. We were sending our children to the YMCA, a first grader and a fourth grader. Our first grader didn't like it much either. They spent most of the time in line, riding the bus, getting in line again, walking up the hill, getting in line again for the restroom. By the time I picked them up, they didn't have a snack, they hadn't started homework. It was basically a wasted hour of time, and they just didn't like it. The Easton Area School District is one operating district. The education and services provided should be uniform throughout the district. I need this board to explain to me why child care programs are operating in other schools in the district, but being denied at March. I need the board to explain to me why we had a program at March, but now we are being denied the program. I need the board to explain to me why in the 21st century they're considering not including it in this policy when many, many parents work and need a little bit of flexibility before school or after school for the safety of their children. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Judy Greco. I live at 627 West Lafayette Street, and my kids were at March School in the 80s. And my neighbor, Kathleen, told me about this. And I have to say that it's incredible to me that you have this amazing budget problem, and this isn't going to solve your budget problem at all. And this program is so important to families. When my kids were little and they were in March School, I mean, I had the ability to work part-time. I could pick up my kids, but even then it was a problem working part-time with two parents working. Nowadays, practically everybody is two-parent households, and to say it's so easy to send them to some place like the Y or something like that, when they're right in school, and somebody has to get them to those other programs, and the school is available, and it's there, and I feel as a taxpayer that this program is very worth it, and I support it, and I really hope that you will continue it.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to the board. My name is Paul Barclay. I live at 146 East Wayne Avenue, and I'll be brief. I'd also like to speak in favor of a consideration of policy 707 that will have a way to facilitate the reinstatement of before care and after care, or extended care, if you will, at March, simply because the staff and the principal there and the teachers and the community have made this facility so effective and attractive to my daughter and to everyone I know. It seems like so much has already been done with the money and the effort, and you could get such a multiplier effect with such an incremental addition of effort and at no cost. I would really hope that you would consider that, and I'm just here to say that much, and thanks for your time.
Yes, my name is Kurt Ely, and I live in College Hill, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. I'm going to ask that all board members bring to this issue of Policy 707 an open mind. I'm concerned that many may have already reached a conclusion and that some of the comments tonight may have fallen on deaf ears. I would ask that you try not to do that. Keep an open mind, and I'd ask you to also give very serious consideration to organizations like the National School Board Association and the Pennsylvania School Board Association. And yes, those of you who know me know that that's not an organization I'm particularly enamored with. They wanted you to limit public comment, among other issues of concern. But the Pennsylvania School Board Association and the National School Board Association are extremely clear in their support for this type of childcare. They believe strongly that it should be done in schools. They believe strongly in school board members and school district administration partnering with a variety of community-based and, yes, Mr. Anderson, businesses. They emphasize that rather clearly in their materials, businesses in providing this kind of care. There are multitudes of information available to those of you willing to take a look to see, Mr. Riley especially, and certainly Mr. Myers, but others certainly on this board. There's a multitude of information that will make it clear to you that these programs make an enormous difference in the education of our children. We've got children who are not doing well. We've got test scores below the national averages. We're very concerned about that, and these programs make a difference. And not only does the Pennsylvania School Board Association say that clearly, but the National School Board Association says it clearly. They have a program. their Extended Day Learning Opportunities program that they endorse and support that says you folks, if you're going to be leaders as school board members, should be choosing these programs, supporting these programs. So you listen to that organization in the past, you count on them for guidance. I would ask you to count on them again, listen to what they say, and support this program, not just at March, but throughout the entire district. By the way, the Pennsylvania Department of Education is extremely supportive of it as well. They have a program and initiative that they do in conjunction with the Department of Public Welfare that oversees daycare. This program not only talks about pre-K, but it supports in every possible way these kind of programs for preschool and after school throughout the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the agenda items?
My name's Ken Newquist. I work and live at 813 Porter Street. And I gotta be honest, I've been on the periphery of this. My wife's been dealing with it primarily, but I can tell you that she's been really frustrated with how this proceeded. I mean, it's already been recounted earlier tonight. I think the inconsistency is probably the thing that's driving people nuts, the amount of work that they put into it to get to this end result. I think that March prides itself on being a neighborhood school, and this before and after care program plays to that. And if it's revenue neutral or has a slight advantage in terms of revenue, then we should pursue it. I mean, these are the kinds of things we should be looking at. If it's not, then we should figure out a way to make it so. I don't understand in the research that I've been doing exactly what the full objections are. If there are 1,000 hidden costs that are going to add another $1 million to our budget deficit, then spell it out. But to just not elaborate on this is, I think, problematic. So in conclusion, I think that there's obviously a lot of support of this on both on College Hill and at other elementary schools around the district. And I think it's worth pursuing. And I think that you as the board should figure out a way to make it work.
If there's nothing, no one else, we'll close this part of it and move right to student PTA principal representative. Student representative, Bernard England.
Happy spring or winter, depending on how you look at it today. I would like you to please bring up my slide. I'm kidding, it's April 1st next week, so I figured I'd put it up now.
Okay, Bernard.
Just gotta get back at you for that one. I wasn't able to make the last meeting, so I want to just talk on a few things that we did in the past 2 months. Recently, we had our Mr. Easton, and we raised about $314.20. We had an 88 attendance. It was at the high school in the auditorium. This year's Mr. Easton 2011 was Mr. Greg Butto. I don't know if he's not here tonight, but he did a great job. We crowned him and gave him a little sachet. It's pretty nice. We also had Gymnastics Special Olympics at the high school. We had 150 volunteers and 130 students with special needs. Just the event itself was just mind-blowing, and the fact that we pulled together as a student council and just like as a student body was just great. We also had our blood drive. We want to thank Miller Keystone, everyone that helped out with that, all of our just the community in itself that actually helped out, the staff in the building. We had raised a final report of 105 lives that were saved, so I just want to give a round of applause for that. I know our representative from Miller Keystone, she was very grateful of that. Next up, we're working on our Shawnee Rover Day, which is going to be in June. Also working on our Liberty Track and Field Special Olympics, which is going to get more people that were at the gymnastic ones to go to our Liberty ones later on in the spring. We're also working on a Veterans Memorial Day, where we're going to have a student speak the Gettysburg Address. That'll be on May 30th, on that Monday. We also recently just had a March of Dimes kickoff rally. We donated, had people donate $258.50, and upcoming we're going to have on April 17th a Blue Jeans for Babies and Rally Day at the high school, and that's where teachers, they had already donated maybe $5 or $10, I'm not really sure what the price was, for them to wear just blue jeans and just different things just to raise money for March of Dimes. It's going to be leading up to a walk that'll be on April 17th in Dorney Park in Allentown. It's just 3.5 miles, so if you guys aren't ready yet, start running. I know I run, so drink your water and stretch every morning. And that'll start at 10 o'clock in the morning, so if you're, like I said, if you're not ready, start getting ready now. But other than that, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Ing. We need some levity. PTA Representative Jill Nathan.
Good evening. I know we've done some recognitions tonight, and I have some recognition as well. It's always nice to recognize people who go above and beyond to support this district and larger efforts. Tonight, I want to recognize the efforts of those who are shaving their heads to raise funds to fight pediatric cancer. I think our leader in this was Jenna Broadhead, and I'm sure a picture is somewhere up here. She's a teacher at the Easton Area Academy. There she is with one of her students. That's the before picture. She wanted to show her students how important it was to do an activity like this and to care about something larger than themselves, and also to raise funds for such a great cause. I really appreciate that one. She did a wonderful job, and while I'm pointing out Jenna Broadhead, there's the after picture.
Oh, she looks good.
She looks good. He looks really good. I have to say that. I want to say they're not the only people who are doing this. There is a whole group at the middle school who will be doing the whole shaving of heads in April, and there's a community shave in May. I don't have the exact dates on those, but anybody can go to stbaldricks.org for more information. So I think that's great. I'd actually like to thank the administration and the board tonight for listening to the concerns of the PTAs about the provisions in the COPE contract. I know the revised contract is up for approval tonight, and we are so glad the revised contract addresses all of our concerns. We very much appreciate the additional effort that went into that. I'd also like to reinforce all the comments made by parents tonight about on-site child care. I think there's a great advantage to children and families, and there doesn't need to be any cost to the district or taxpayers. In fact, this is a program you could run yourselves and bring in real revenues to this district. And I think while we've talked so much about March, it's important in all of our schools, grades K through 6. And people don't think about 5th and 6th grade, but so often these kids are dropped off at the school way before the doors open. Breaks my heart when I drive by that building and there are kids outside half an hour before the doors open, and they often go home to empty houses. I think there's a great opportunity for you to run these programs and give the kids a place to go. The PTSA post-prom extravaganza this year begins on May 14th, continuing through the 15th. In support of this event, there is a district dress-down day on April 20th. PTSA is also selling t-shirts that can be worn on this day. If anyone's still interested in a t-shirt, let me know. They're wonderful. They have artwork that says "Celebrate the Journey," and I think it's going to be wonderful on April 20th to walk around the schools and see so many people wearing them. The PTSA is also hosting our first annual Rover Fest. It's an all-day festival for the Easton community. It's an opportunity for all of the booster clubs, student groups, and PTAs, providing opportunities for them to raise money. There'll be food, music, games, activities for the entire family. It'll be May 21st at the high school campus. Normally, in the next couple of weeks, we'd be sending out invitations to our annual scholarship and retiree dinner. However, PTAs also face a number of budget issues, just like the district does, and we are scaling back this year, and there is no more dinner. We're not taking money away from the scholarships, we're just taking it away from all of the extras. Instead, we are going to coordinate with the high school's Academic Excellence Awards to award all of our scholarships. And in fact, while we've cut out the dinner, we have increased the number of scholarships this year, something we're very proud of. The local PTAs are also looking to hold school board candidate forums before the upcoming primaries. They're still working on details and dates, but soon we'll be contacting all of the school board candidates to invite them to participate. PTA does not endorse candidates, but we look to provide the public with information to make an informed decision. The next council PTA meeting will be Monday, April 4th at the 7-8 building at 7 p.m. These are public meetings and everyone is invited to attend. Thank you.
Will you see that the board gets a notation about the candidates' nights?
Absolutely.
Okay,
You all
I mean,
would.
just putting it out there, we might, with all we see, if you give it to Mrs. Schaefer, I'm sure she'll get.
I'm sure we can get it in your Friday
Yeah,
package so you can have it.
or in the packet or something.
Sure.
Principal's representative. Ms. Nauman and Mr. Cup.
Good evening. I'm Meredith Nauman, principal at Palmer School. Mr. McCauley is unable to be here tonight, so I am here as the elementary principal rep. March has been a very busy month for your elementary principals. In addition to our daily responsibilities, we obviously have had a very strong focus on the PSSAs, from altering building schedules, planning pre and post PSSA activities, ensuring test security, proctoring, making makeup tests, all of those things. In addition, March is the month where we complete all of our support staff evaluations. So we've been busy meeting with all of our support staff individually to discuss their performance this year. In addition, we've been having check-in meetings for our tenured teachers who are working on their individualized professional growth plans. We've also been conducting our daily walkthroughs, working on school improvement plans, revising our building budgets, working on CPEC planning with our central office staff, PBIS meetings and trainings, and working with our data teams to analyze student data and progress. We have a little more than one marking period to go, and the teachers and principals are reviewing our student data and making changes to our teaching strategies to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students. We are looking forward to a busy marking period to come, teaching fourth marking period standards, data analysis, class trips, spring concerts, etc. So we thank you.
Good evening. As Meredith stated, there's quite a few things going on in our buildings in terms of what our administrative staff is currently working on alongside of our teachers, which includes looking at student achievement and making sure that we're making those adjustments so that kids are prepared not only for assessments that are given by the state, but also prepared for their futures. So I'd like to start tonight by reporting from the 7-8 building and the high school that we had a successful first week with our PSSA reading and math. The students worked extremely hard, and I'm proud of their efforts. Each classroom I walked into, students were working diligently on the task at hand, making sure they were highlighting in their reading passages, making sure they were documenting in their open-ended passages on their math what their work was and how they arrived at that particular answer. So students were doing exactly what we asked of them, and we expect the results to show that as well. Next week, we will start the writing and science assessments, and we expect to see similar results. I'd also like to bring Mr. Prokutsak up at this point in time. I don't want to wait or delay, but the two of us wanted to make a very important announcement to the board and to our community. Mr. Prokutsak?
We'd like to congratulate Mitchell Minotti on the 140-pound weight class champion this year out at state wrestling last week. So we wanted to bring him forward to that and then congratulate him. In addition to that, Mitchell is also part of our Lehigh Conference leadership, which he's an athlete that has been selected by our school to attend quarterly meetings, and Mrs. McGinley had a chance to come up and we hosted that for the local schools. So congratulations to Mitchell on that accomplishment. Thank you. With that, Mitchell will also go on to our Wall of Fame. He's ready to get his picture taken, get that process started, and we'll do a ceremony for that shortly. And the reason we brought him up right now, Mr. Myers, Mitchell is a conditioned athlete for 6 minutes. He's been standing for an hour right now, so we got to get him out of here right now. And Bernard, you jinxed us with the weather out here. Last week I ordered nice weather, and you jinxed us, and now we have snow. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the NCAA wrestling tournament last weekend. In addition to Mitchell doing well out in Hershey, we had Jordan Oliver one of our ex-athletes out at Oklahoma State win the national championship, born and raised in Easton. And in the background, I don't know if you saw him or not, Brian Snyder, another ex-wrestler of ours. He was a two-time semifinalist, finalist in the NCAA championship, and he's coaching currently at Nebraska, and they did have a national champion, and he formerly coached at Arizona State, which had two people in the final. So our wrestling background and history is there and on the national scene again.
Thank you, Mr. Prokotzak.
Mr. Tuck.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to thank you for being the chief representative at this Career Institute of Technology's National Honor Society banquet. It's always nice when we get a principal there, in charge. And you were introduced, and I was happy to see that as board chairman.
Dr. Volcano,
thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to attend, as well as Mr. Poliskowitz, our 12th grade principal, to see our students excelling, particularly in the technical fields up there. They do a tremendous job at CIT, and our students tend to excel. And hopefully this year, when it comes time for the scholarships, we end up bringing them all in again, as we did last year.
Yeah, you did.
So hopefully that'll happen again. So, as Mr. Prokotzak mentioned, Mr. Minotti was our 35th state champion in wrestling, and I was going to mention Jordan. I figured I'd bring Jim up here to kill two birds with one stone with the size and the length of the agenda tonight, so I'll get to the point. I'd also like to congratulate our cast and crew of the musical Hairspray. It was an outstanding performance. At one point in time, during one of the solo acts, the young woman actually brought goosebumps onto my arm. And I looked at my wife and I showed her that my arm, I was wearing a short sleeve shirt, believe it or not, I think at the time, and I had goosebumps on my arm because it was that great. The other piece to it, as the history teacher, the irony of it is that it was filmed in it wasn't filmed, but it came out in about 1962. Was the year that it represents. In 1962, ironically, 50 years ago, was the opening of our high school on William Penn and 25th Street. So the two of them coincide, and for me, it was a very historical moment sitting there watching those things transpire on stage, thinking about what it might have been like at a high school like Easton opening up its doors at that point in time 50 years ago. So it is our 50th anniversary. It'll make Easton Area High School Day quite an extraordinary event this year with its 50th at the current building that we now occupy. As I mentioned, it was an outstanding production. We look to see several Freddie nominations. I hate to brag. It seems like every time I get up here, I start bragging as the high school principal, but it's not a difficult task to do when you're the principal at Easton Area High School. Since we're on the topic of plays, the 7-8 building, Angie also wanted to make sure that I addressed, to remind everybody that Thoroughly Modern Millie will be showcasing, the 7-8 students will be showcasing that play this Friday and Saturday at 7 o'clock. And there are tickets still available, so I know some of you may have came out for Hairspray and were turned away at the door. Here's your opportunity to see our young students as they progress up the ladder. That is it for the secondary report at the high school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. We'll move on to reports, information, and actions. Superintendent Orr has given her report, so we'll move right to the business manager.
I'm going to report tonight on the Safety and Wellness Committees. The employee safety, and it was mentioned before, on April 15th, the employees will be showing support by participating in the March of Dimes Blue Jeans for Babies fundraiser. In the employee safety area, due to the weather, the March meeting was moved to next Wednesday, March 30th. The Certified Safety Committee recommended the purchase of safety step ladders for each building to reduce the risk of improper overhead lifting and the potential risk for falls. The most common injuries here at the district, I tell you each month, are related to slips, trips, and falls. In the past, some employees have used chairs, tables, chairs on top of tables to lift or to hang objects. It's important for the Easton School District to provide necessary tools to achieve a safe working environment. And those step stools were ordered, and Tim Case took care of that, and on March 2nd, they were delivered to each building. For the month of February, there were 9 workers' comp claims filed, which is a decrease of 4 from the January report. There were 4 record only, 5 medical, and no lost wages. Out of those 9, 6 of them were fall or slip injuries, one struck by a student and one a motor vehicle collision. Someone was unloading items from their car and a car backed into them. So that happened at the library. Any questions about the report? Thank you.
Thank you. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It has been a privilege to have served as solicitor to the Eastern Area School District for more than a decade. I leave with high regard for the board, the administration, and the staff as they serve our students and our community during these challenging economic times. My decision not to seek reappointment was not made lightly. When I began representing the district, it had separate outside counsel that specialized in special education issues. However, as stated in the board's request for proposals at the present time, the Eastern Area School District now requires that the solicitor must also perform and handle those special education issues. With the demands of my practice, I am not in a position to provide those additional services. Accordingly, I elected not to seek reappointment. While I had absolutely no role in the selection process, I have had the opportunity to work with several members of the King Spry Educational Law Group over the years. I believe they are well qualified to serve the district. I wish the board, the district, and the entire Eastern Area community well in their shared endeavor of providing the best possible educational experience for the students.
Thank you, Alan. I'd like to just take the time to thank Mr. McFall for his years of service to this district and this community. With that said, we'll go to association reports. I do believe Mr. Dealey. It's your time.
Good evening. Norwegian researcher Dan Alwies defines bullying as when a person is exposed repeatedly and over time to negative actions on the part of one or more other persons. He defines negative actions as when a person intentionally inflicts injury or discomfort upon another person through physical contact, through words, or in other ways. I want you all to know that I am disappointed and disgusted. I am tired of the way the staff of this district has been treated. Respect is a word that is often thrown around here, but I don't think it is understood. You would think that the bullying that we fight daily to prevent is only found out on the schoolyard among our children. Unfortunately, it is not. As was pointed out yesterday by a columnist in a local paper, you have engaged in bullying. Threats and intimidation are the lesson of the year. You hired and sent a bully out to threaten parents. He told them that they shouldn't attend board meetings in support of their children's right to learn. Shame on you. This bully's job is also to threaten teachers that if they don't give up a contract that you approved, another 30% of the teachers will lose their jobs. Shame on you. Despite the fact that your threats are impossible to carry out, it is shamefully clear that threats and intimidation are the only way you understand how to communicate. You already cut 10% of the staff and increased class sizes dramatically. What are you trying to do? Scare us into submission? Again, it's convenient to hire a bully to hide behind when he does your dirty work for you. Don't think we don't know who hired him. You can plead ignorance of those actions, but it is certainly not respectful to anyone, not to your teachers, not to our students, and certainly not to their parents. It is the worst kind of disrespect. The lesson both the columnist and I agree upon is that you're teaching our children that it is acceptable to bully and intimidate to get what you want. You should be ashamed. The communication from members of this administration is deplorable. On several occasions since the hiring of Mr. Blunt, I have emailed Mrs. Goodry about the budget or budget-related questions. Instead of getting information that we need to make informed decisions, I am told only to speak with Mr. Blunt. Does Mr. Blunt control the district's finances? Apparently so. So, Mrs. Goodry, how much money would the district spend on unemployment insurance if it lets 215 teachers go? Mr. Blunt's response is that I need to find that out on my own, and the budget is available online. Who is running this district? Shouldn't the business manager be providing numbers and the superintendent be responding to our requests? They are paid to do it, yet pass those responsibilities on to a new attorney who, by the way, is much more expensive than the last one. It is amazing to us when 30% of the teaching staff is threatened with furloughs, there still can be money found for this. This money must be available from the $24 million surplus that the district has been able to amass, which is still one of the largest in the state. In case you forgot, we have a contract that is in effect until August of 2013. We did not unilaterally approve this contract. In fact, most of you voted for it too. Since then, we have approached you repeatedly and said we are willing to discuss it and give you relief. Your response is threats and intimidation instead of discussion. Shame on you. How is that supposed to win us over? Last year, if you recall, after your threats and intimidation, instead of taking the $5 million in concessions that we offered to you at your request, Mr. President, you voted to fire 72 teachers anyway. The fact that we even approached you to help again this year, despite the overt threats you've levied on us, is more than reasonable. Shame on you for attacking the people who work for you. Shame on you for refusing to do the hard work that needs to be done. Shame on you for threatening the parents, teachers, and students of this district instead of working with them. I'm here to say, despite everything that has recently occurred, the EAEA will rise above this and make an attempt to salvage, for our students, the reasonable class sizes and educational programs they deserve. I contacted the superintendent today and indicated our willingness to sit down and do just that. I hope you choose to listen to what we have to offer you, so you can leave the threats and intimidation at the door. Thank you.
Now, all due respect to you, Mr. Daly, you were supposed to give a report, not an indictment to the board, so I think you're a little out of line there. Mr. Krivsak has already given this report. Executive session reports will come from me on Wednesday, February 16th, from 7:25 to 9:22. The following individuals were present: Mr. Casavinci, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Guidry, Mrs. Hess, Mrs. Holzberger, Mrs. Mandarino, Mr. McFall, Mrs. McGinley, Mr. Myers, Mr. Rowlett, and Dr. Volcano. The purpose was to discuss personal matters and contract matters. On February 24th, 2011, from 9:40 to 11:15, the following individuals were present: Ms. Pilati, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Catravinci, Ms. Fisher, Mr. Freund, Ms. Guidry, Mrs. Hess, Mrs. Holzberger, Mrs. Mandarino, Mr. McFall, Mrs. McGinley, Mr. Myers, Mr. Rowley, and Dr. Volcano. The purpose of that was to discuss contract matters. On March 14th, the following individuals were present: Mr. Casavinci, Mrs. Buckman, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Guidry, Mrs. Hess, Mrs. Holzberg, Mrs. Mandarino, Mr. McFall, Mrs. McGinley, Mr. Myers, and Dr. Volcano. The purpose of that was to discuss personal matters. With that done, we're going to move on to discussion and matters and actions on policy 707. Which is use of district facilities.
Discussion that could be for either.
All right. At this point, I'll open the floor up to board members for discussion. Anyone wants to speak on this matter?
I have one question.
Carrie, somebody turn on her volume because we cannot hear her.
Is it not loud enough? Let's see. Try again?
Put the microphone closer.
Carrie? Yeah. Want me to try again?
Yeah,
we're good.
Okay.
Better? Okay. My one question would be when an email was sent to Mrs. McGinley regarding other schools and their uses of their buildings for these purposes of after-school care, before-school care. Were you ever able to find out if other schools, other elementary schools, are using your facilities for those purposes, Mrs. McGinley?
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking if other school districts have before and after care?
Or just
No.
our buildings?
I was asking, we had sent an email to you, one of the board members had, asking if we could find out if principals in our schools are using their buildings for preschool, or not preschool, but before school and after school care. And I was wondering if you had had an opportunity to find out if your elementary schools are doing that.
There's two. There are two. There are two schools that are presently doing it. They are Forks and Tracy. There is none at Cheston, contrary to popular belief.
There's none at Cheston?
There's none at Cheston. There is not a before or after daycare product at Cheston School Hall.
So there are two right now.
That is correct.
Okay.
Follow-up question? All right, Heather?
I have a question. I don't have a big problem with daycare, but I have a problem with this particular one is the other two schools that have daycare are run by local agencies. And I am one that supports people that would come from our agency, especially as a taxpayer, that we're going to do something for them. This one is out of the area, and that's my biggest concern about it.
That's not, I don't think, what this policy needs to address. The policy just needs to address before and after school programs.
But I'm not addressing the policy, I'm addressing the possibility of why a local organization wasn't involved in coming to them with the same procedures that they have done at Forks and Tracy. I'm not arguing about the policy.
The policy is for the use of district facilities, and under number 5, it says before and after care programs that receive board approval. In October, we all voted, and it was denied. So I don't think this is about Hildenbrandt. This is about the policy itself.
I just as a matter of clarifying this discussion too, we have several items on policy 707 that need addressing, and we are unable to finalize anything with that policy because of the before and after care question that keeps arising. My understanding of the situation was that originally, back in August, the program had been approved, but there were some potential issues that the solicitor had brought to the board's attention. And after that time, we realized that the fee structure in our policy did not specifically define how a charge would be assessed. And at that point, we've also discovered that the other two programs have not been assessed a charge, a fee for use of our district buildings. What we were striving to do with the policy at the time, with the language that was there about board-approved daycares, was just simply to decide on a fee structure that would be appropriate to guarantee that there was not a cost to the taxpayer for the use of the buildings. And the roadblock we hit was, okay, do we allow our buildings to be used for this purpose? And if so, what is the appropriate fee? And so I think that I personally feel, we've talked about having to garner consensus and how that process works. I think that we first just simply need to define if we, as a board, wish for our district buildings to be used for that purpose. Because until we, as a group, have made that decision, it's impossible to decide what the fee would be. And I personally don't feel that we should distinguish between profit or nonprofit or locally based or not locally based. There are numerous national organizations that run different programs that we already use in our schools. And I would like to see us just simply define if we want our buildings used for that purpose, so that we can move on to determining what the fee for that usage would be. I don't.
I agree with you, but I think that we have to. They're already running. They're already in existence. The policy has to cover them.
Well,
I don't think we can go backwards from there. I'm not disagreeing.
And I read the book that Laura gave us from about the consensus model, and it sort of said, you know, the first thing you need to do is state the proposal and make sure everybody understands and is clear with what the proposal is, and then we listen to what the concerns are and make sure that those are then listed in our potential proposal. I actually drafted up a potential motion, but I wanted to hear what other concerns were so that I made sure that the motion adequately reflected everybody's concerns with the issue. And so far, I think I have them here, but I'm not sure if there are other concerns from other board members that I would like to then address in the motion that I have. Are there other concerns besides if it's a profit or not-for-profit organization, or the fee?
At this point, you need to let other board members respond and see what they have to say, because right now we've heard from Billy, we've heard from Pat, we haven't heard anything from Judy. Tim and Dr. Volcano haven't responded, so let's hear what they have to say.
I'd like to respond. Two things. In reading the original contract that was sent to us back in the spring, it was we're talking about last year. They're talking about a 50-50 split if there is any profit. Well, I don't know how we determine profit here, because profit could be eaten up in a lot of different ways if they are a tax-paying organization. And we may not get, one of the members in the audience said, we may never get anything. Okay, that's open-ended. Mr. Kish came up with the wise situation. He said, you know, $1,000 a room a year. That's about what it would cost. Well, if you take that, that's $1 a week, 20 cents a day. And they'd be paying $25 a week, plus if there's any profit. 20 cents a day, I mean, with electricity and the use of the water and, you know, sewage and lavatory, let's just put that, is, say I'm saying for 25 children, really isn't anything. And I think there was some protest to that. I personally think, even though we have done this many times, that this contract does not spell out what Hildebrandt would give us in turn for the use of the building in black and white. So I am also in favor of, you know, keeping them there because that's a safe environment. But Hildebrandt isn't going to run a for-profit enterprise and lose money. So they're making money someplace. And I think they're also at Lafayette College. And or they were. I might be wrong there. They are. Okay, I thought they were. Okay. And I'm sure they're not getting everything free handed to them. So we have to come up with something that doesn't take money away from the taxpayers and have a set fee that they're going to pay. And not this, if there's any profit, we'll split it with you. Well, you could buy things, you could always hide money. But when you make a if, that big is a big if. But I am in favor of trying to keep this in the neighborhood, into the schools they go to. but we have to come up with a more defined fee structure that isn't going to put a cost on citizens in other parts of our school district. And that's my feeling, and I read the contract over, and it certainly doesn't really fall on our side too much. And I was very open about that.
Okay. Mrs. Hess?
Plain and simple, I understand the concerns for parents, and I can agree with that. Wondering where your kids are, making sure they're safe, I can understand that. The concern I have with the policy more so states of how we are going to charge, because I don't know if $1,000 is going to cover it for a year of what it's going to cost the district. So that's the only concern that I think we need to come up with, is how we're going to charge.
Mr. President, I'm not comfortable with the new fee schedule. I don't believe it provides adequate assurances that the school district costs will be covered when used by a for-profit business. Plus, it doesn't address issues as during school care, which we used to provide to the high school to students who were parents. There's nothing in there about that, so that's absent. I also object to the striking of, I agree with Mr. Kish's recommendation against striking F and G. Items F and G is application processes for approval of usages and facilities. Thank you.
Okay. Because now it's left up to me as president. First of all, I want to address one important thing, that there definitely is a need for daycare. My issue is at what cost? Reading the contract, looking at the proposed fee, where I spoke to Mr. Kish, and this came from Emmaus, I understand, it's $1,000 fee.
One of the local school districts.
One of the local school districts. Well, just to reiterate this point, I went to a website, and in the entire 500 schools in the District of Pennsylvania, there are only 29 who are involved with this. Of that, less than 10 of them are actually school districts that are running it. I have some concerns. We sat here and listened to concerns of the parents, and I hear their concerns, and my heart is out to them, but I have to say this. Of what we heard, everything came from College Hill. Nothing from Forks, nothing from Palmer. I do not need at this point any conversation from the audience. You've had your turn, it's our turn. Nothing from Forks, just from the folks at College Hill. My issue with that is we're bringing in an organization that is 5 blocks away, and if they really wanted your business, they should make arrangements to get it in at the building at Lafayette College. I think the issue also lies with me is if they really wanted to, they should provide transportation, because if I'm not mistaken, the organization before them did indeed provide transportation for the students to go back to where they were. And in various other schools throughout the district, transportation is provided to go back to their various daycares. I know that to be a fact at Cheston. I've spoken to some of the principals. They all would love to have daycare. That's their answer. Problem is, we don't have space and we don't have the finances. We face a $14 million deficit problem here, folks. We can't sit back on one hand and say we wish to cut staff and layer it on top of an expense, whether it's minor or not. $1,000 is not going to cut it. If we have a custodian, we have 3 custodians at building. If we have a snowstorm, his job is to get out there and get those sidewalks clear. If we have a sick child in there, he has to stop what he's doing to get inside to take care of that problem. I understand all the research and work that people have done for this, but in the same breath, I must echo the words of Ms. Fisher and some of the other folks. We have local agencies here that can do the same. I don't feel the need for us to take the funds and give it to a company that's going to funnel it back in Dallas, Pennsylvania. I have an issue with that. I've always felt that we need to be local. That's where I stand. Now, the profit-sharing aspect of this, it's kind of perplexing to me, because I really have not seen anything concrete and black and white that's going to tell me this is going to happen. I feel at this point right now, though, it's just my discussion on this point, I don't know where we go from with this. But I can tell you right now, if we do adopt this, $1,000 is not going to pay it. Not even close. And the fact that it went from, at one point we were discussing $100 per day, and then at one point someone mentioning waiving the fee is not going to, the waive is not going to work. That's a $17 million building that the taxpayers of Easton paid for. And I'm not just talking about those on the Hill. I'm talking about the entire community down to Regalsville. So that's something we need to bear when we make our decision. With that said, because I don't see this on the agenda to a vote, am I correct with that? We need to take action one way or another. Ms. Holzberger, I don't know what your motion is, but you can bring your motion out at this point, and we'll decide if we're going to vote on your motion.
Okay, it's lengthy, but
Make it quick.
I think it covers the bases. So I'd like to make a motion to allow, okay, can I first ask a clarifying question? It's not a point Mr. Riley made. When you mentioned the high school, were you thinking that it should be included in here, that type of care, or?
No, that was in the past that we had.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
This
because.
policy doesn't address the full scope of childcare. In the past, we had allowed a group come in and provide childcare to students that have children.
Teenage
And that's not
mothers.
addressed in this policy, so it's inadequate.
Okay, so my motion here, then I think we're clear because it's just before and after care. It's not during the school day. So I think it covers. I just wanted to make sure. So motion to allow our district school buildings to be used for before and after care services operated by properly licensed outside child care providers during the student's school year, provided that the third-party contract provides for the board-approved fee for building usage during that time period, eliminating costs borne by the local taxpayer, that the contract covers liability insurance as recommended by our district solicitor. Then, child care provider proposals will be, offering a profit-sharing option and who meet the above stated requirements will be considered, but the board-approved fee will still apply. The board-approved fee structure will be reviewed by the Buildings and Grounds Committee to be added into Policy 707, and these fees, once finalized, would be assessed to all providers of said services effective the beginning of the 2011-2012 student school year.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we need discussion?
No.
Do we need discussion?
We've had discussion.
I don't
That's
know.
your motion.
I
If you want
think
discussion on that,
discussion in between.
you can have discussion on it if you wish.
I would like to, until we get this fee set up, which we still don't know what it is, and that's important, I'd like to table this. And with the, telling the people, you don't have to come back again and talk to us about it. If we could come up with something that's reasonable and covers our cost, then, that might change my mind. But at this point, we know nothing more than we did last year. So I'd like to table this for the policy committee to address.
So Buildings and Grounds
But
issue.
the reason that it's here is because the policy committee can't do anything until we agree if we're going to use our buildings for this purpose. So the motion would be to send the fee back to Buildings and Grounds to be assessed with Mr. Kish to determine if it was adequate there, so that the fee could be written in, but at least then we would know that it wasn't a waste of time to look into that because before and after care got the permit.
Well,
And before and after care is already in existence in buildings. in the district.
And if we drop this particular and say no to it, they will have to vacate at the end of the year. That's the point.
Right, which is not gonna help anyone.
no, I
that's-
can't say yes to this without a fee structure, so we
You're
could
not
go
saying
on.
yes to the program, though. You're only saying yes to the language to allow daycare to exist in this district.
Well, I understand that, but I'm concerned with the current contract that says if there is a profit. And that,
No, that's what this addresses.
The motion says that even if a profit-sharing option was considered, the board-approved fee would still apply. So they would still have to write in their contract, they're still going to pay our fee.
So-
And then if there's profit-sharing offered in addition as an incentive, that would be considered.
or,
But they're guaranteed.
or a fee in general. If we come up with $2,500 and they don't buy into it. So this is part, Mr. President, I just want to get the, this is Part A. It wouldn't go into effect until we approve Part B.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, because now we're asking to approve.
Approve a fee structure that will cover our costs. Yes, okay.
But her motion is not that. Her motion is, if I'm correct, is to see if we want to bring the program into
Not just Hildebrandt, though. just
Any-
the
any-
daycare program.
Any before and after care services in our district school buildings.
So there's a motion and a second.
I still, are you amending the policy
No.
with what you just said, or?
No, there's no, the
what she
policy
said,
is on
that's what the motion is.
standstill just to have this discussion of before and after care.
So we're not voting on,
No, not, the policy's going back to, there's other stuff that still needs to be worked on, but this hurdle kept coming up, so we said, we gotta stop and just deal with this.
So we can vote on A,
So
and
the
if we don't
policy's
vote
not
on
being voted
B,
on tonight at all.
So then what are we doing?
This drops.
It's not on there.
We need to table this.
Right, well,
Okay. This side of the table.
So what are we voting on? If you're saying, we're talking about policy 707, isn't that what we're voting on?
Just the discussion of before and after care.
The motion is
Wow.
just whether or not we're going to allow aftercare programs.
Before and after
programs in our
daycare program.
district.
That's the vote that they're asking for. And there's a second.
And
Anybody else have other discussion on this?
And there must be a B to
Pat,
finally approve
Pat.
this program.
Pat,
Jody.
at this
Okay,
point
no,
right now,
okay.
there-
Jody wants
Yes.
to talk.
go ahead.
I think we're getting quite confused and getting off track here. The point of it is we're having the discussion, Jen is making the motion that this would go back to policy so that we can discuss what the fee would be if we decide we want before and after care
That is her
in our
motion.
schools. So that is what we need to vote on, so that we can either be done with it and it's not gonna have daycare in our schools, or we're gonna take it back to policy so we can figure out the fee.
Exactly.
And I
That's her motion.
made a motion to table, if there's no second.
Hold on. We still got one motion going now, Dr. Volcano.
we're moving to send it back to committee, simple.
No.
Tim, what
We
we're
are
voting
voting,
on is whether or not we're going to have before and
If we're going to have
after care in
before-
our school district, in our schools, and allow that. So then it can go back to policy so we can figure out what the fees would be.
you understand?
So it's either a yes to the before and after care
Or a
a
no.
no to the before and after.
And we're not voting for Hildenbrand, because that was already
No.
done. That was
Hildenbrand
done.
has
No,
nothing
it has
to
nothing to
with
do with
this.
it.
This
No.
is strictly for the
This is
policy.
strictly for the policies we're gonna have before and date before. Now, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion on this?
I want to understand this now. We're just voting on whether we will approve daycare in our schools.
That's what we're voting on.
For daycare, before and after.
Before and
And after
Yeah, there's no
care,
daycare, it's before and after.
and that
So
there
that
will
if
be a
Cheston would decide,
fee.
and they have space, that they would decide the program could be run there, they would have the opportunity, just the same as the other schools.
Regardless if it costs the district money.
No,
No.
then it will be
No.
going back to
That's-
policy.
that's
so
B.
For the
that
fee
can be
structure.
Okay,
established.
okay.
Okay.
State.
Are we clear with this?
Now,
We're voting on if we want before and after daycare. Okay?
got it.
All right. Now, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. It moves back to policy
To
that we
establish a
will,
rate.
to establish a rate for the before and after daycare program.
Okay, I just,
And along, it goes to policy, but also has to go to buildings and grounds since it is part of that.
can we do buildings and grounds to get the fee structure and then send it to be written into the policy?
I can.
Because there's a bunch
If
of
there's a
other,
motion for that, I will accept that.
I'd like to motion that we, just at buildings and grounds, determine what the fee structure is to be then implemented into policy 707.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that's the end of that. Okay? No comments at this point.
I told you.
It's under.
Mr. Siegfried, I just asked the solicitor if we needed to, and he said because it's on the agenda, we do not. Mr. Siegfried, you know, you're out there, you had the chance to speak. Okay? You can bring it up at the end. And then you can't because it's not an agenda item.
No.
It's already been an agenda item, so you had your chance. Okay, Alan, if you want to explain, we'll go from there.
It was clearly listed as a discussion and/or action item. It was on the published agenda. The public had an opportunity to speak to the issue, and many of them did. It does not require additional public comment before the board to act on a motion.
Thank you. All right, with that said, 707 is moving back to buildings and grounds, that aspect of it, and we will finalize that part, and then we will finalize and strike down whatever else is in 707 we need to do. Okay? Let's move on to field trips. Field trip request from Mr. First. Motion to approve field trip as presented.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Discussion. Okay, D, Eastern Area High School graduation date and contract. Well, we'll just hold up while everybody leaves since we've already done what they want to hear.
Thank you. The secretary to catch up.
She didn't have time to type that whole motion up, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, take your time. No, go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Can't do it now.
Let me know when you called up. You okay? Okay. Now, is there a motion on the graduation date and contract?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I do have some discussion on this.
Yeah.
Where we have a proposal from Mr. Cuck. Is he still here or is he gone?
He's here. He's still here.
Michael?
They're going to get him.
Michael? Mr. Cuck?
Yes.
Yeah, I was calling you in here because we have.
I was watching from the hallway.
We have some discussion on graduation date, and I have some discussion, some information.
Sure.
Okay. As it pertains, if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at a $31,000 cost of graduation. Is that roughly around the cost?
That is the cost that was proposed at Academics and Education and moved to the full board for approval. That's correct.
Okay, now, for some strange reason, I had a light go off in this little shiny head of mine.
Yes,
okay? There has been discussion that we move it outside the Cunningham Stadium. Well, I need to express this point to you. That cannot happen. We just dropped $10,000 worth of product on that field that we approved last October. The grass will not be grown, and we will tear up everything we got, so that's not going to work. So here's the other backup plan that I happen to get with and pump and pull teeth with Mr. Case and Mr. Kish. We have a perfectly gorgeous facility a few blocks away that is a rather large gymnasium that holds about 3,000 people. Am I correct? 3,500.
Yeah.
We could use that facility. It's centrally air conditioned. We'd have to cut back on the number of tickets, but we could use that facility. And we can also streamline the old gym, the other auxiliary gym. We can put television camera screens, whatever else in there, and save ourselves quite a bit of money if we go that route. Because one, we only need to practice the bus drivers in the morning to take them over for the rehearsal. Two, if they do park there that night, we will try to make one of our fields available for students only to park their vehicles while parents can park on the macadam area. Am I correct with that, Joe? Is that what we were thinking about?
There's areas that park on the side of the grass.
Okay.
You can make.
But we have to make arrangements with the Forks Township Police to make sure nobody gets tickets.
There's approximately close to 800 parking spaces, counting the parking lots in Cheyenne.
I mean, this is, you know, believe me, I have a decent thought in my head.
Joe, how many spaces? I'm sorry, Carrie. How many spaces? About 800?
Close to 800.
So we're
It
talking
depends.
approximately 3,500 people, and if we're opening the other gym and doing other things to have people there, and I just see a little bit of an influx with the amount of spaces versus the amount of people and cars that are going to be coming.
Well, at this
Even
point,
if
we
we
also,
allow,
we'd have to park them on some of our fields.
High school and bus them over. And we can also park the students at the high school and bus them over if we want to go that way.
The parking areas are limited to the capacity of the gym and the auditorium. The auditorium can be used, that whole 7.
Forgot about the auditorium.
And you can also use the auxiliary gym with the appropriate seating. But we have limited access to the sides of the roads, Echo Trail, North Drive, coming into the facility, and then along Wagner Lane. But there's the question of what type of weather is going to be there, because if we have a rainstorm, obviously, you're not going to be trying to pull cars in on the fields if the ground is wet. So
Right.
you're having it inside, but you're taking a chance on the additional parking on the fields if the weather is inclement the day before, a few days before, even that afternoon with thunderstorm.
Along with that, we still have the baseball field as an option to put commencement on there, which was done in the 70s. So we do have other facilities. Now I look like I got two brains together, which means I'm in a world of hurt.
No, I just took the report that you had asked Mr. Case to do. I recall when that building was built that we were looking at approximately maybe 700 parking spaces, give or take a few. Tim actually went and counted them, and it came up to 661.
So we're even shorter than what we thought.
Yeah, it's less than we thought. I mean, Joe is right. I mean, I had seen the prints really did call for more spaces, but when you actually started to paint those spaces, it didn't all work out.
Those are painted spaces. We counted parking spaces as along the edges of both sides of the roads, the trails coming in.
That's true, but I just would like to add that the roads themselves are more narrow than the average road. That was purposefully done so people wouldn't be able to speed through there.
Exactly.
And it's worked out great. The problem is, as Joe had said, yeah, you could park them there and probably get more cars, but it also creates an impasse problem too. That any of you who have been to any of our in-services experience, or if you've been to any of the athletic events that get crowded, it gets pretty hectic. So I just wanted you to have that information prior to any other.
Could you not use the high school and bus them over there?
Yes, that was my next
That's another question.
Well, I would suggest that would certainly be done for the students, so there'd be no student parking on the campus. It would only be the people who are coming, and then we could bus the kids back there. But I think the bigger problem, I know that I'm concerned, because last year I even looked into this. My main concern is, yes, we would have to limit the number of tickets substantially. I mean, did we say 2 to 3 tickets?
No, about 4.
Would be the maximum number.
Inside the gymnasium.
Right. The main concern that I have, because I was there up with Joe up to my knees when they were building that place in mud, and knowing it as closely as I do, when you bring that number of people to that campus, keep in mind it's in a residential section of town. And yes, Forks has been great with us. The police have always worked with us. You know, as long as we gave them notice, the chief has been great with having that they're not there to take the people. They're there to make sure that things work. But it is an enormous amount of traffic in that area, and we don't have the collector streets to really take that traffic in a timely manner. I mean, there could be traffic jams there for a long time.
See, I wasn't expecting,
So
I didn't mean it just for the students. I meant for the public to transport.
You mean shuttle them too?
Shuttle.
Yep. Well,
I mean, for older people, they could be dropped off.
We had also looked at that, but I don't know where we're gonna go with people if it's raining and they're standing there for a shuttle. I think people are gonna get pretty upset if they have to park at the high school and wait for a shuttle. They can stand there with their, hopefully with their umbrellas, but it could be a real mess for them. That's why we had opted not to make that recommendation.
Okay.
I think one thing that you really have to keep in mind, this is a culminating experience for our students. I mean, it's a kindergarten through 12th grade. It's a joy for them. It's a joy for their colleagues, and it's a joy, obviously, for their parents and an extended family. And the way that we have respectfully done it, in the last several years, has been accommodating for all. It is an expense, there's no doubt about it. But at the same time, I think that you have to think about our students and what their needs are and what their families' needs are.
If I would add to what Mrs. McGinley is stating, is that our students come from a very, very diverse population, and we're not just talking about race, creed, or background, but multi-parent families, divorce situations. I would hate to have a senior have to decide which part of the family gets to come, which part of the family doesn't get to come. It becomes some of our students the most significant academic achievement that they will have in their lifetime. And to then limit that or say you're going to be watching it in a facility which is on site, but you'll be watching it from a screen or watching it from afar, kind of takes away from the authenticity of being there and watching your child, your grandson, your niece, that individual that you have helped shape as an adult reach that point in their lifetime. So it has always been the high school's wishes, and I speak on behalf of all my students as well, is the high school wishes to have graduation at Slavery University. When the cost last year looked at $41,000 or $45,000, we came back in the class of 2010, contributed over $9,000 to pay for screens and other costs associated with graduation. This year's class and future classes are planning to do the same thing so that they have the same type of graduation that the students had before them. So whether it's the screens and each parent gets to see their child walk across the stage, regardless if you're in seat 688 or you're seat 2, looking over the choir. My other big concern is that this year we could have 700 potential graduates. Right now we actually have about 735. Counting students who are in 11th have the opportunity to graduate in 12th, and our students that are currently at Eastern Area Academy. So with those numbers, if we then look at just the seating arrangement at the 7-8 building, and we look at the rows, and I'm sure Tim has done his homework with this in contacting me, those 700 plus the stage and the whole 9 yards, so to speak, I don't know where people are going to move. It's really going to fill that space. We can put the choir up in the corners. We can make some of those adaptations. But to cut some corners and save money, I understand the crisis that we're currently in. We reviewed very closely our building budget. We made additional cuts. I can go to the students and we can look at some way to offset some of these costs. But when you look at using our facility, I think it also puts more strain on not only the usage, but I will also say the liability of having thousands of people attend an event that's never been pulled off before, and to have anything happen, God forbid, that there is something that goes down on our facility and our campus because we aren't prepared for this. We don't know what that turnout could be and how things could work because we've never had 4,000 plus on that campus on one given time. I'd hate to try it on graduation night. That's just, my take. But I really appreciate, and I've tried my best to keep an open mind with all options. So looking at Cottingham, looking at this in front of you, Mr. Myers, it is something that we need to take a look at, but it is in the best interest of our students and Eastern Area High School to have graduation in 2011 at Stabler Arena.
Okay, now.
Yeah, I'd just like to say something real quick. When the students go to Stabler, and I've noticed since even in Northampton,